Hello everyone, welcome back to the session. I am Sudeshna, Assistant Professor of CSE Department. In this session, I would like to continue the topic of CPU scheduling algorithms from operating system course. Now, in the previous video we have seen two algorithms, that is first come first serve and shortest job first. In shortest job first we have seen both preemptive and non-preemptive. Now let's see, in this session we'll see remaining CPU scheduling algorithms. Now let's start with the third one, that is priority scheduling. Now let's see how this priority scheduling is used to assign the CPU to the processes. Now basically the scheduling is giving the CPU to all the processes based on the priority. So every process when it is created will be assigned some priority by the operating system. Now whichever process has highest priority, that will get the CPU. Now the priorities will range from 0 to 7. In some systems it is from 0 to 4095. So some systems will take lower numbers as higher priority and some will take higher numbers as higher priority. So but we'll take lower number as higher priority. So if three processes are there, we'll compare the priority and whichever is having higher priority, we'll assign the CPU first to that process. Now how this priority is assigned actually to the processes means, the operating system will assign the priority to the processes in two ways, that is based on internal factors and based on external factors. If it is based on internal factors, that is if it is internally, then it is based on some characteristics like memory requirements, time limits, etc. And otherwise externally, so externally means it is based on some type and amount of funds being paid for computer use, importance of process, etc. So mostly actually it is given based internally, that is based on some characteristics of the system like this one. So based on the priority, the CPU will be assigned to the process. And we have to remember that this priority scheduling can be preemptive or non-preemptive. Preemptive means it can release the CPU in between the execution if a higher priority process comes into the queue, and non-preemptive means the process will not release until it completes the execution. So this is about priority scheduling. Now let's see one example of this. Now we have an example here. We took 5 processes P1 to P5 and burst times are given and also priorities are given. So execution times and priorities are given. Now here arrival times are not given. It means that you don't know which process came at what time. If arrival times are given, then we have to go for preemptive scheduling. Now here I am taking non-preemptive scheduling, means I am not taking into consideration about their arrival time. So I am just assuming that all the 5 processes came at the same time. Now let's see how they are executed in the Gantt chart. So in the Gantt chart, let's see the sequence of execution. Now out of all these 5 processes, the one which is having higher priority is P2. So P2 will start the execution. So its burst time is how much? 1. So from 0 to 1, P2 will execute. So P2 has done its execution. Now after P2, the next highest priority is for P5. So P5 will execute. So P5 will execute for 5 milliseconds, means 1 to 5, that is 1 plus 5, that is 6 milliseconds it will execute. Next priority is for P1. So P1 will execute for 10 milliseconds, means 6 plus 10, that is 16. Next priority is for P3. P3 is executing for 2 milliseconds, that is 18. And the last one is P4, which is executing only for 1 millisecond, that is 119. So this is the sequence of execution of priority scheduling. That is, these processes, if they arrive at the same time, this is the sequence. If arrival times is also given, then we have to compare each and every process when based on the arrival time, you have to compare their priorities. Now let's see how to calculate the waiting time and turnaround time. It is same like our previous scheduling algorithms. Waiting time is, now this arrival time we have assumed that everyone came at the same time. So based on the Gantt chart we can easily find out that. So waiting time of P1, so it got the CPU at what, at 6th millisecond. It means that waiting time of P1 is 6. Now similarly, waiting time of P2. P2 means P2 got the CPU at 0th millisecond. So waiting time of P2 is 0. Now waiting time of P3 is 16. Waiting time of P4 18. Waiting time of P5 1. So these are the waiting times of individual processes. Now we should calculate the average of all these. Now average means add up and divided by the number of processes. So I'll just add up all this. 19, 35, 6, 41. So it is 41 by 5. Now let's see the next one, turnaround time. Turnaround time, we have learned the formula as completion time minus arrival time. But here in this case we have seen that arrival time is 0 for everything, means everyone came at the same time. So we'll just take completion time instead of subtracting arrival time from that. Directly I'll take completion time. Now let's see the completion time of P1. So completion time of P1 is how much? P1 is completing its execution at 16th millisecond, so it is 16. Now similarly, completion time of P2. P2's completion time is 1, so it is 1. Next, P3's completion time is 18 and P4 is 19. P5 is 6. So I'm not subtracting minus 0 because arrival time is 0 for everything. Now add up all this and divided by 5 is your average turnaround time. So 17, 35, 41, 41 plus 19, 60 by 5 is your average turnaround time. So this is your priority scheduling, which is non-preemptive. So if arrival time is there, we have to go for preemptive. Now let's see what are the drawbacks of this method. The drawback, a major drawback of this method is indefinite blocking, which is also called as starvation. What is starvation mean is, imagine that there is a lower priority process. Now lower priority process is always stopped from being execution because there is always a higher priority process coming on the way. Now every time higher priority process is only executing, leaving the lower priority one. So the lower priority process will suffer from indefinite blocking, also called as starvation. And the solution for this problem is aging. Now what is aging mean is, now it is a technique of gradually increasing the priority of processes that wait in the system for long period of time. So if a process is waiting for long period of time, then instead of like asking it to wait for some more time, you can just increase its priority. So if priorities process is increased, it can execute in the next turn. So that is solution for starvation, that is called as aging. So this is about priority scheduling. Now let's go to the next one, that is round robin. Now round robin is the scheduling in which the CPU is given to all the processes one after the other, like it will give in turns kind of thing. Now let's see in detail what is that. Now to implement this round robin, we need a small unit of time called as time quantum. We also call it as time slice. So we need time quantum. Generally it will range from 10 to 100 milliseconds. So you can select any time quantum which is number between 10 to 4. You can take even 0 to 100 also. So just in our example, let's see how this round robin is implemented. Now for this example, I took 3 processes, P1, P2 and P3. I took 3 processes and their execution times are given. Now here in round robin, what we'll do is, first of all we'll decide a time slice value. So imagine that I'm taking this time slice value as 4. If it is 4, then let's see how it is done. Now, and I'm imagining that all these three came at the same time. So, execution will start like this. From 0, execution will start. The first process will execute is P1. So P1 will execute, and it will not execute for 24 milliseconds. It will execute only till the time slice expires. So everyone will get the turn of CPU based on time slice. So first P1 will get CPU and it should utilize for 4 milliseconds. Means till from 0 to 4 P1 will execute. Now once the time slice expires, immediately the CPU is given to the next process, that is P2. Now P2 will take the CPU and it should utilize for 4 milliseconds. But if you will observe, the execution time of P2 is only 3, means which is less than your time slice. Then what it will do is, it will just utilize the amount of time that it needs instead of utilizing the whole time slice. So it will utilize only the amount of execution time that it needs, because it is less than the time slice. So 4 plus 3, it is 7. So P2's turn is over. Now it is given to P3. So P3 will execute for 3 more milliseconds, because it is also less than your time slice. So it will execute for only 3 milliseconds. So 7 plus 3, 10. So by this, one turn for all the three processes is done, means one round is over. The next round will start. Again it will start from P1. So P1 will start executing. Already its execution time is 24. Out of 24, 4 is done already. So remaining 20 are there. So now next I'll take this CPU only for 4 milliseconds, because the slice is only 4. So 10 plus 4 is 14. Next, after P1, P2 should take. But P2 has already executed for 3 milliseconds, means its execution is over. So in this round, this will not take the CPU. And similarly, P3's execution is also over. So in this round, P3 will also not take. So again, next round, P1 only will take, and when P1 is taking, the remaining rounds P1 only will take continuously, because P2 and P3 are already done their execution. Now let's see how P1 is done. Now already 4 plus 4, 8 is done. Now next thing is again P1, that is 14 plus 4, 18. Next is P1, 18 plus 4, 22. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 4, 16. Next P1, 22 plus 4, 26. Next P1, 26 plus 4, 30. So 5, 6, 6 4 is 24. So P1 is done. So this is a Gantt chart which is showing you the execution sequence of all the three processes. So first, all the three processes will execute based on the time slice. Once the round is completed, the second round will start again from P1 to P3 likewise. But P2 and P3 are already completed their execution, so they will not execute in the next round. So this is how you will use round robin. Now in this case, let's see how to calculate the waiting time and turnaround time. Now waiting time is just let's see here how the waiting time is calculated. It's same like our shortest job first. Now just here P1, its waiting time is it got the CPU immediately at 0th millisecond, so its waiting time is 0. Plus you have to see that P1 has used the CPU from 0 to 4. After 4, it released the CPU and it gave the CPU to P2. So it is idle after 4th millisecond, and it is again busy, and that is it took the CPU again at 10th millisecond. Means from 4 to 10 it is idle. So this is called as waiting time. So how to find out this? Means take the difference, that is 10 minus 4. So it is 6. Now similarly for P2, P2 has took the CPU only one time, that is at 4th millisecond. Similarly P3 took at 7th millisecond, that is 7. Now average of this is 17 by 3. This is average waiting time. Now next is turnaround time. Turnaround time is completion time minus arrival time. Arrival time, we took it is 0 for everything, we didn't mention the arrival time, so you have to assume that it is 0 for all the processes. Now we'll simply take its finishing time. Finishing time means the final time, at what time it is finishing. So P1 has completed at 30th millisecond, so P1 is 30th, P2 is 7, P3 is 10. So this is turnaround time. Now the average is 47 by 3. That's it. So this is round robin scheduling. Now here we have to remember one thing. The performance of this round robin is completely based on the size of the time slice. If the time slice is too small, then it is nothing but like first come first serve. If it is too large, then it is like priority kind of thing. So you should see that this is neither small nor big. Now, as I told, its performance is based on size of time slice, and it is preemptive algorithm. So why it is preemptive algorithm? If P1 has took the CPU and immediately it is not waiting till its completion of its execution, it is not waiting till 24th millisecond, it is releasing the CPU in between only once the time slice expires. Similarly remaining processes, that's why it is preemptive algorithm. So this is round robin. Now let's see the next algorithm, that is called as multi-level queue scheduling. Now let's see what is multi-level queue scheduling. Now if you'll observe in the diagram, actually the processes that wants to execute, they are actually we are actually making them to wait in different queues. Now if you'll observe, these are different queues: student processes, batch processes, interactive editing processes, interactive processes, and system processes. So the processes related to these queues will be waiting in that particular queue. Imagine that the process is related to batch process, then it will be waiting in this queue. So these are the queues where each queue is assigned some priority. Now if you'll observe, this one, that is system process, is given higher priority, whereas the next one is higher priority when compared to the next one. Means it's like decreasing order. So the last queue will be having lowest priority. So processes will be waiting in the different queues based on their category. Now we can actually categorize that these are foreground processes and these are background processes. Now the priorities processes are waiting in the priority queues. Now when the CPU is idle, now the CPU is first given to a process which is there in the higher priority queue. Imagine that CPU is here. Now the CPU is given to a process which is waiting here. Now this next process which is there in this queue will get the CPU only if this entire queue is empty. That is, if all the processes of this queue have completed their execution, then only the CPU will go to the next queue. And again, if any process in this queue wants to execute, the condition is that the above two queues are empty. That is, there is no process in the above queues. Likewise, the lower priority queue, that is lower priority process, will get a chance to utilize the CPU only if the above four queues are empty. That is one condition. And there is one more thing. Imagine that the CPU came to the last queue, that is process in this queue is executing, and in between suddenly a process came into the higher priority queue. In that case, what you have to do is, the process should release that CPU and it should be given to the above higher priority process. That is, it is preemptive. So whenever a higher priority process is coming into the system, the lower priority should release that and it should give to the higher priority one. So this is the problem in this multi-level queue scheduling. Means the lower priority process will have lesser chances to execute, because always it will be busy in executing the higher priority processes. Now in this one, there is a solution where the priorities the CPU is utilized for all the above processes based on some percentage, like 80% of the CPU time is given to the above one, next 20% likewise, or else you can use like round robin kind of thing, where a time slice is given. The higher priority processes will be given 10 as time slice, the next is 8, next is 7, 6, and the last one is 4. Means here all the processes in this queue will get the turn to execute each of 24 milliseconds each, whereas here everyone will get 10 milliseconds each. Likewise, if you will follow, then the drawback may be overcome to some extent. So this is multi-level queue scheduling. Now, as I told, this is having a drawback that is overcome by the next method, that is called as multi-level feedback queue scheduling. Now, if you'll observe here, this quantum is given like this. Now, here just higher priority is at the bottom side, whereas lower priority is there at the top side. Now, here higher priority processes are given time quantum of 20, means each process in this queue will get the CPU for 20 milliseconds, whereas here 16, and the lower priority will get only 8. If it is able to complete within 8 milliseconds, it will exit. Otherwise, if it is not able to complete in 8 milliseconds and still waiting to get the CPU for long period of time, then it is sent to the higher priority. It's like promotion. So process, if it is waiting and if it is suffering from starvation for so long, instead of starving it, you can send it to the above higher priority queue. So likewise, it will be moving to the top priority if it is not served until if it is not served with the CPU for long period of time. So it has got a chance to move from lower priority to higher priority for longer period of time if it is not served. So this is advantage of multi-level feedback queue scheduling. So if you'll compare with our multi-level queue scheduling, so if the student process is never served here, now after some period of time it is allowed to move to the above queue. So here it will be waiting for some period of time. Imagine that it is not given CPU in this also. Then after some period of time, it is allowed to move to the above queue. Likewise, the processes can move from lower priority to higher priority. So that is the advantage of multi-level feedback queue scheduling. So this is about CPU scheduling algorithms. So totally we have learned 6 scheduling algorithms. So let's recall. We have learned about FCFS, shortest job first, priority, round robin, multi-level queue scheduling, multi-level feedback queue scheduling. I hope everyone understood CPU scheduling algorithms in these two sessions. Thank you all.